15 seconds. Good morning, Eric. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We are on location again. This is 3 times in a row that I haven't been joining from my upstairs desk, but we're just downstairs. Eric, you're a local Indiana guy, so I figured, why would I do a coffee chat virtually? Why not just have you over here? We can sit down and have a cup of coffee.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to get to know you. Before we get started, though normally when I'm live, I don't get a chance to have the Q&A. I've got it right here. So if you are asking questions, please ask them. I know Eric and I would really love for the show to be engaging rather than me just going through. I got a boring script, but we could do it. But the questions are better from the audience. So if you're there, give us a hello. Brett, you're tuning in. Give me a holler again this morning. I always love to see you there. Today's topic is going to be super interesting. One where I'm a little out of my bounds. I'm familiar with MCPs. I'm familiar with what they're capable of. I'm a bit of a skeptic, personally.
I am too.
I like that. Well, we can be skeptics together this morning. But most people know me. I'm John Hart. I'm the host of Coffee Chats. Eric, many people may not know you. And what I want you to do is just give me the 5-minute story of Eric. What's led you to what you're doing today? And then kind of segue us in. Why MCPs? When I do coffee chats, I always ask the guest what we want to talk about. You chose MCPs. So introduce yourself and tell me why you want to talk about MCPs today.
Yeah. So my name is Eric Frankenberger. I've been working in tech for 10, 12 years. I started off help desk, and then I really cut my teeth when I got the world's weirdest dual duty job where I was both a systems administrator and pit crew member for a race team. So I did that for 7 years. That was the most fun I've ever had in my life. But traveling 100 to 150 days a year gets difficult. So I pivoted to DevOps, and I worked for Genesis, which was formerly Interactive Intelligence, which a lot of indie people know. So that was a really good place. Taught me a lot about the foundation of how to build and deploy systems. After that, I went to TriMedics for a couple of years after a mentor suggested that I interviewed with his company. And now I work at MISO, and I'm the senior platform engineer on the emerging technology team. So it's a really fun, interesting job. I do have to give the base disclaimer that everything that I say, this is all my opinions. This isn't MISO's opinions or Eric on behalf of MISO. All these MCP things, if I have any hot takes, anything like that, they are all Eric from Eric.
I like it.
But yeah, MCP was kind of like AI came out, we say that, but like LLMs came out, ChatGPT came out and just like floored everybody. And I think a lot of businesses kind of saw that, and it was like, that was like seeing Bitcoin come out and then you already missed the wave after Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Then like Litecoin and Ethereum come out, and then everybody's like, okay, I got to get on this next gold rush. So MCP kind of felt like one of the next big gold rushes to it of like, we might have missed the initial implementation of all of these LLMs, but we can get ahead of external tool calls through MCP. So that was kind of the next big area of focus. And that's kind of what got me into MCP, was just the new news about it and seeing what it was about. Like I kept seeing all of this hype, and it was like, I can't tell if this is hype, if this is hot air, or if this is something that's going to be put into use. So I just started rolling with it.
No, I'm super excited. Very interesting. You very quickly jumped over the fact that you were a pit crew member. Tell us a little bit more about that. I know you also race, and this year you did a race, a 24-hour lemon race, right? So tell us a little bit about like your hobbies too. We want to get to know you.
Yeah, anything mechanical, I'm just a super geek for, and it all kind of bolsters this interest that I have in tech. So the 24 hours of lemons is you get a $500 car, you strip it out, you put a roll cage in it, and then you go drive it around a track for 2 real long endurance races with your team members over 2 days. So you kind of have to be as good of a mechanic as you are a driver. So if you're a pure driver and all of your team is pure drivers, you're not going to win. If you're all pure mechanics, you're not going to win. It takes a mix. And that's why I like the field that I work in, because it's almost the same thing. It's like partial developer, partial systems administrator, and it merges the two. So it's the school of thought between everything. It's kind of got its parallels. So it's really interesting for me. And the sysadmin pit crew thing was, I wanted to prove to the big mechanics that the computer nerd could do pit stops too. So that was like, I would just hang around pit stop practice all the time until they eventually let me in.
Yeah.
And it was off to the races from there. So
I love it.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. Probably something I'll pull back here as we get later in the segments with the wrap-ups. I'm curious if you're in the audience. MCP, I think, is a fairly technical thing for most people. I think it's perceived at least as technical. I perceive it. So maybe I'm kind of sharing my thoughts on this thing. But if you're using them or if you're experimenting with them, let me know. And then it's great to see you, as always, Brett. Oh, I don't have my StreamYard up to pull your chat up. Yeah, I do. There you are. Good morning, Brett. And so explain to Brett. So Brett's a VP of sales VP of sales, I think, Brett, over at a managed service provider. Fairly technical, but not hyper technical. How do we explain MCPs to a VP of sales?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to put it would be effectively giving something like ChatGPT access to external tools. So if I go to ChatGPT right now and I say, hey, send an email to this person, it's probably going to hallucinate or like tell me how I can send an email to a person or tell me it can't or something like that. I connect an MCP server to ChatGPT and I expose the tools of the email program to that MCP server. ChatGPT now has a way to go out externally and repeatably, predictably make calls to whatever I want it to.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is ChatGPT and the base LLMs have base model limitations. When you ask them to do actions or tasks outside of their ecosystem of what's possible in ChatGPT, for instance, write an email, update a Trello card, read information from Salesforce, it's going to hallucinate because it can't do it. And MCP gives it the tools and the connectors to be able to interact with third-party SaaS tools. Is that right?
Yeah, any kind of tool that you would want that's external. And its benefit is that it provides kind of a pairing of a natural language description of a tool with the deterministic method of being able to execute the command that's needed. So when you ask it a question, it can run through the MCP servers, look for the tool that describes best what you've asked it to do, and then it will always execute the same command. So I can do things like I can say, like, if I have Copilot open in VS Code, I can say, hey, this is the API endpoint for this. I want you to remember that. Every time that it goes to make an API call, it might decide to do it differently. It might hallucinate and add, like, I don't know, a subdomain onto the URL that I've given it for some reason. But with MCP, I have that natural language description of the tool paired with this is the only way you can execute it. So it makes it reliable. It also sets it up in a way that a vendor can provide their own MCP server. So something that's known good from the vendor, and it's a universal implementation across any AI solution that wants to implement MCP.
So maybe lightly explained or lightly technically explained, it's APIs for the LLMs that, whereas a traditional API is going to have a risk of a hallucination, an additional field or property, or maybe even messing up the actual URL schema, MCP can just take raw text. It'll handle the translation, for lack of a better term, as its own, and then make its own API calls.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be API calls. See, this is where the waters get muddy.
I get muddy. Yeah,
to learn. Yeah, it's really difficult to say like this is exactly what MCP is and what MCP isn't. So you can take an API and then write an MCP wrapper for it. And it's kind of like when you think about when somebody does a lift and shift. So like you've got on-prem servers and then you just copy the hard drives up into VMs in the cloud. Like you didn't really get much gain of the hosted resources of the cloud.
Yep.
So if you have an API and then you just put MCP around it and you didn't develop this like AI first solution or born an AI solution,
gotcha,
you kind of run into some weird issues there. So it's not always directly MCP to API, and MCP isn't always interacting with API. The simplest way you can think about it is natural language description with tool execution method. So execute a script, you could, I don't know, like send data over a network, like send a HTTP call to something, you could hit an API, query a database, anything like that. So it's not limited to APIs. It's as simple as natural language description, tool execution method.
I like it. All right. We've beaten that down. I appreciate you letting me keep asking the questions, right? Because part of the benefit of this show, I always love learning. And I've gotten to dabble a little bit. I'm very microscopic with MCPs, though. I'm on another show with Matt Lee and Jason Slagle and some of the other guys, and they've gone nuts using MCPs in their code dev cycles and their entire DevOps cycles. And so I'm just catching up a little bit here. But
yeah,
one thing I want to think about is the operational benefit. Okay, so in our space in the MSP world, there are a lot of MSPs working with their customers to build agents and to build value and automation for their customers. Where might they consider? They've been using, in a lot of cases, they're using things like an N8N or some drag and drop workflow tool, right? Where might they consider MCPs living in that space? Is it a replacement of another thing? Is it an additive layer inside of some of these automations and agents? Where does that fit?
Yeah. So, okay. I'm glad that you keep asking questions because I could go off on talking about all the ambiguities, but I don't want to make it's hard for me to be accurate when I'm talking about all the endpoints. But these
Yeah.
are really good questions to hone it in on
Yeah.
what we're looking at here. So I think from an MSP standpoint, MCP provides the benefit of usually if this is a vendor provided tool, you know that it's good and vetted by the vendor.
Okay.
And you want to implement that. You know that you have the reliable tool that's going to have the reliable execution methods. There's all of these other things like I said earlier with the gold rush of like Bitcoin to Litecoin to Ethereum. It's like LLMs, MCP, and then it keeps going. And then like I went away for 2 days and didn't look at the computer, and then the whole world was using OpenClaw.
Yeah.
So that has its own kind of user-defined skills where you could have a much lighter weight way of describing to the agent how to access external tools, but that's only within OpenClaw's ecosystem.
Yep.
It's not transferable. If you have an error in the way that you wrote this thing, it's not going to work as well. MCP is universal across all of the deployments for the most part. So you can plug this into if you're using OpenAI, if you're using Anthropic, if you're using any different vendor, anything that supports MCP that can be there's a difference between MCP host, client, all that stuff, but any kind of chat interface that can support MCP servers, it's going to behave the same. Okay. So it's just a universal connector. It's like a USB plug.
So maybe I'm making it too simple here. When I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about when TCP and UDP were defined, right? We were defining the beginning of a communication protocol, for a lack of a better term. Is this a similar comparison right now? Are we building a whole new communication protocol?
It's really funny that you say that because like when I've talked about this before, I've made the exact same comparison about like when I think of a protocol, I think of TCP, I think of UDP, like these incredibly well engineered solutions that are just rock solid. So it's interesting. Like you look at MCP and there's a few different standards for it. Like there's the open API schema for the JSON description, like the whole description of how an MCP server should look, how the MCP registry should look, all those things. But it really just feels like a loose description paired with the JSON schema.
Okay.
So it's like it's not nearly locked down the same way that you would think of something as well defined as a protocol like UDP or TCP.
Well, I think that's just privy to the nature of how long it's been around, right? Like TCP, UDP are really well defined, and they've also been leveraged for 40, 50 years. So it's a little different, right? It's had a lot of time to bake and a lot of time to be pressure tested. Where are we now with MCPs? Are we still at the early? I think my gut says we're at the early innovator side of the product adoption curve. Are we having definitions of RFCs? Are we having actual technical definitions coming out that are universally standard? Who's kind of leading that rush, and how's that all work? Because I think when I go to the TCP UDP, right, we were all writing the protocols together. We were defining the standards. We were defining the RFCs, and we were explaining how everything should work. Is it kind of the Wild West right now?
Yeah,
or have we started to stabilize?
It still is, and it's another one of those things that almost feels like an illusion. Like ChatGPT comes out, and then like a month later, everybody feels like I'm so far behind the curve because I haven't already implemented a robust solution for this, but the tools aren't actually there always to do that. So there's a lot of gaps in MCP right now, and it's not the fault of the developers. It's just the age of it. And like I don't know if it's still under a freeze, but the API was under like a preview freeze for a while they still continued to develop this out. You can go on their GitHub repos and see all of the developer talks that they have, their roadmap, things like that. The most recent thing that they came out with was a registry so that you can have a way to like the public registry is effectively all publicly registered MCP servers are here. And then other people take that registry in and then serve a subset of those MCP registries.
Okay.
Say you want to I am an internal person and I only want to be able to see MCP servers that are internal to me. I don't want users going out getting whatever MCP server they want. You can do that. Not every MCP client allows you to connect to a private MCP registry. Okay. So you can look at these things, and every time that you get to a different endpoint, you see a different level of maturity. So it makes it very difficult to understand exactly where things are. And that's made not worse by the fact, but it's more confusing because you'll look at vendors having robust MCP servers that are deployed that you can just go and use and it works. But it's through the general lens of general AI with general MCP server.
It sounds like it's in a lot of flux right now, which is where every technology was, right? We didn't, like I said, we've had the internet and let it bake for 50 years as we define the protocols of how we do communication over the internet. I'm curious to kind of pick MCP up right now and look at it like Where does it belong, in your opinion? I know it's your opinion, and some people might believe it belongs production ready and it should be out there creating value. Where are you seeing it, and that's most predictable value creation? And where do you think maybe it's not ready for the world yet?
I think like a lot of other things right now, it's really good at data retrieval. So you can have an MCP server that's connected to, your SharePoint or something like that. Instead of writing a full RAG solution, there you go. It's document retrieval from SharePoint. So that's really helpful. It's the most of the use cases that I see right now are developer centric because that's a lot of what I'm doing. But things like being able to, instead of having to remember the syntax of a CLI, the MCP server for the CLI allows me to say like, hey, go check on the status of this deployment in this slot in this cluster. Here you go. I don't have to remember every single command perfectly.
Yeah.
Things like that are great time savers. And there's a lot of things that it can bring a lot of your workflow into a single pane of glass. So instead of flipping between all of these different programs, I can have the CLI, I can have all my deployments, I can have data retrieval from another source. And it can be 20 completely disjoint things, but based on what I provide in the chatbot, I'm going to get the answer.
So what I'm thinking in my developer days, where I'm seeing it, you said having it all in your CLI really kind of clicked something for me, because what I'm seeing is the ability to be in a single interface for the majority of my day to day, whether it's turning up infrastructure or whether it's getting visibility into the infrastructure, or whether it's writing code now with Claude or some other models, whether it's using an OpenClaw from the CLI. Are we moving towards this era? Are MCPs giving us the ability to move towards this era where we just sit in the command line all day, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. Like right now, anybody could pick up VS Code Copilot, open some code, and then ask it a question about, say, like something in Azure, and it's going to connect to the Azure MCP server, get the documentation, and then provide it back to you. So it's not going out to a base internet search or anything like that. It knows I need to go to this specific source for documentation. I didn't at any point set my VS Code up to do that. It was just like, oh, you might want to connect to this Azure MCP server, and then it just installs it, and then here we go. Like it's off to the races. So, things like there's a lot of things in almost every company that I've worked for. There's always disjoint sources of data, especially for things like HR. I never know where I need to go to find the holiday schedule.
Yeah.
If I can, there are times where I'll spend a half hour looking for a document and things like that. And it's very difficult to, across the company, organize data in a consistent fashion. If you have MCP servers connected to all these things that are able to go out, know where these things are, and return the data to you within a single pane of glass, and then go out to multiple different sources to combine data and give you the answer. So I'm not like going into, like I could say, hey, is tomorrow a holiday? And if it's not, take it off.
Yeah.
Then it's just going to like go out, find the holiday calendar, tell me what days are off. If I don't have a holiday, it'll enter a day off for me.
That is interesting. Okay. I'm starting to see some of this value here. I have this wild belief. I don't think it's a wild belief. I just think it's an early belief that the majority of SaaS, and we're going to just completely ignore the fact that people want to say SaaS is dead. And I see, what did you say here, Brett? I'm pulling you up. Thank you for answering that. Awesome. Thank you for my technologies, really limited AI. So thank you for educating Brett this morning.
Yeah, if you have any more pointed questions too, Brett,
yeah,
let me know. We'll start ripping on them.
Jump in here, Brett. Let us know. Especially I want to apply it to your day-to-day, because I think that's where some of these things are the most valuable to talk through.
I'm so technical that I know only how to talk about like how MCP benefits me directly as a developer. So I like hearing how other people would want the question answered too, because that helps me understand it better. So
well, and if you are using it in the audience, jump in here and let us know, because it'd be really good to know where you're finding value, because it's all about learning together. Okay, so I was starting to go down my wild belief, which I believe probably in 5 to 10 years, most SaaS tools look like chat interfaces. Because why do I need to log into Salesforce and hop around my opportunities and my accounts and my leads? The only reason I'm going into Salesforce in the first place is because I want to go work my pipeline. So I believe in an era where I go into, call it ai.salesforce.com, and it says, here's your next 10 things to do. Here's your next best jobs to do. And so I say all that to say, is that where we think MCP could start really assisting us? Is just aggregating all, you said a couple of use cases, central pane of glass. I like that. You said everything can be a CLI driven. I like that. I don't know if my VP of sales is going to want to run like that. But then the data retrieval sounds like it's probably its best next use case. What about data updates? What about like updates, deletes, creates? Are we safe in that era yet right now? Or are we more in the read era and value of MCP? Does that make sense? I'm kind of going down the CRUD acronym.
Yeah, let me think about that for a second.
I feel safe reading with an MCP. I don't know
Yeah.
if I feel safe creating with an MCP.
The only reason I don't feel safe right off the bat would be just like applying the base logic of like, oh, an LLM can be inaccurate, but I don't actually know enough to know if it's safe to apply that same
Yeah.
logic. Like I think you would be safe if you provided a file in a chat interface and then said, hey, upload this file to here
Yeah.
or make these changes. And then, like a lot of the workflow that I have now, like my value as a developer, I never thought was having encyclopedic knowledge of syntax. So a lot of things I do, I know what I want done. So I'll put a prompt in. I understand the code. I'm not going to commit it if I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Um, but I can sit there and read it. And like the same thing, it'll say to me like, here's the update I want to make. Are you good with it? So like before it fires off,
Yeah.
send me the
Human in the loop.
yeah,
Right,
human in
like-
the loop for now. Yeah.
I think human in the loop applies to all the AI principles right now,
Mm-hmm.
especially for anything beyond read, because there's always that risk. So, all right, I asked about some operational use cases. We found a few good ones. That single pane of glass, being able to drive from a single spot. That is an insane value because it reduces work friction.
Oh, yeah.
Changing context all day. So that's super valuable. We talked about its power of being able to read lots of different sources and kind of combine them into the LLM. I see the value there. Let's talk about the other side. Brett, you asked it for me perfectly. He said, let's talk about safety.
Yes, yes.
Dang it, you led me right in, Brett. That's exactly what I was thinking about. I was like, we have all these great things, but let's talk about security for a minute. Where are we kind of in a security perspective? Like, that's a very vague question. I'll kind of let you tackle it.
No, it's really good, but it's like, it's another one of those things where there's so many different endpoints that I could describe of where it's at.
Yeah.
So, okay, right now, you could say it's the Wild West. I don't think that there's anything new to be fearful of. So it's like we just have a new avenue that the same old as time attack vectors are carried out on. So like the same things are going to exist with like man in the middle, the same like remote code execution, exploitation of vulnerabilities, anything like that. It's just a different avenue. I don't think, as far as I know, really, that there's anything novel about exploits against MCP that haven't existed in other areas where this has already been solved. So you could go out and read an article that's like MCP is going to, destroy everybody's network. Like, okay, so the weird points where it's at right now is like you can download if you're on your computer and you can download any MCP client that you want, like say Claude Desktop or something like that. You're not blocked from downloading that, and then you're not blocked from accessing the entire internet. You could go install a malicious MCP server very easily. It's not going to get caught by your virus scanner. It's not going to get caught by anything else like that. Like if somebody hijacks or takes over the repo or the code base or the server where the MCP server is served from, then you could have an issue there too. So it's the control methods maybe aren't in place yet. They could sneak through the cracks a lot easier. And it's also very difficult to lock down all of the MCP clients, all of the MCP tooling, all of the MCP registry sources. So you can serve up a private MCP registry within an organization, but that might only be able to modify what you see as available MCP servers in like whatever MCP client you limit it to. So I can limit it to Claude Code or Claude Desktop, but somebody spins up VS Code and they can still go out and see whatever registry they want to.
Yeah, wow, we've opened up a can of worms in my mind, right? Like, so I want to go through a few different areas. My first reaction when you said you feel like it's the same attack vectors as before, I'm with you, right? Like, I think it has the same inherent risk that APIs are going to bring, or the same inherent risk that integration connectors are going to bring, because that's kind of what it is. The one thing I'll throw in there that I think is an additional security vector to consider is LLMs really remove obscurity from the security story. Like a lot of security is through obscurity, as in, it's not easy to find this stuff, right? Like just because I have a SharePoint drive of 20,000 files, before I might have access to your SharePoint drive, but it would have taken me forever to find that one file. Now with LLMs and MCPs, obscurity is gone. So security through obscurity is like a lot of what I think the world relies on. And I think as MCPs start connecting faster and adding more entry inputs and outputs, security through obscurity starts to go away. So that's the only add I'll add there that I think is unique about it. But I think it's more unique to LLMs and not MCPs. I think MCPs just exacerbate it because it accelerates the ability to have input and output to other systems. So that's kind of my first take there.
That's a really good way to put it, and like that really concisely puts a lot of the thoughts that I've had around MCP, and I've never or not MCP, but AI in general, and I've never thought about it from the other way of security by obscurity,
Yeah,
like being pretty much gone. There have been times where like where you have it look through a code base, and I don't understand. Like you could have it look at minified JavaScript or assembly code, and it can tell you exactly what it's doing. For a human to have previously done that, taken forever, but that can also be used adversarially of, okay, well, you're not just like going to run on some random port with some, like it might have a default password, but maybe it's not the default host name or something like that. That's right out.
Yeah, I think that's scary. I think one other thing that makes me, going back to our TCP UDP protocol discussion from a second ago, you started saying like MCP registry takeover, right? Like somebody takes, I don't know MCP well enough, so just call me dumb if I'm talking about it wrong. And one second, Britt, I do want to pull your question. I just want to pull this one through because MCP clients are connecting to MCP servers. MCP servers are then served up via a central MCP registry.
Yeah, it's like any kind of marketplace, any kind of extension marketplace, plugin marketplace. Think of it like that.
Who owns the registries? Is this because in my mind, I'm starting to think of like the DNS and the domain registrar, like the central systems that handle DNS. But who owns MCP registries? Is that you can host your own, you can define your own, or walk me through that?
There's a lot of different implementations of it right now. It's the same thing as everything else. So GitHub has their own effectively MCP registry. And then there's like other MCP marketplaces that might not be compliant with the MCP registry open API specs. So it's its own unique implementation. So we go all across the board.
All right.
Right now, the one thing that I've like really focused on is in VS Code, you can provide a URL of a registry. And as long as that registry serves up open API, JSON compliant with, I'm not even saying those terms correctly, JSON compliant with the schema that MCP registry defines, it's going to consume it and then make those MCP servers available to you. So yes, I mean, there's the opportunity of like, if you're hosting an insecure MCP registry, somebody figures it out, swaps it out, and puts a malicious MCP server in there, swaps like one line of code, nobody notices, all your data is exfiltrated.
Yeah, it's the same risk as a repo, for instance, being compromised, right? Like, or a repo having a bad PR coming in. Maybe, I don't know. It's gonna be my best way to compare it right now. I do like always making sure we prioritize the questions from the audience. Brett said, let's say I'm having a conversation with one of my manufacturing clients. What should I be looking at? And he said to create an AI offering. And I think that's too vague, so I'm going to narrow us into the MCP track again, just because that's the reference of the show. Brett, I'm happy to we should catch up anyway and grab a coffee. But I'm happy to answer that question more vaguely. But where might we look at MCPs in a manufacturing space? And I'll add a little bit more flavor to it. Like in my mind, I'm thinking, does MCP have a play with all the IoT devices of some sort? Because that's what's so manufacturing heavy. You have all those collectors and those centers going wild, creating massive sets of data and putting them into the central repository server. So maybe that's where there's value. But I don't know, like, what do you think MCP uniquely might create value in a manufacturing space?
I'm trying to think unique to manufacturing. I think it is so like there could be times where like you're running legacy software in a manufacturing business. There's like an old machine that still runs Windows embedded, but somehow there's like log files that are outputted. You could have MCP that looks at those log files, and instead of like, okay, there was never any way for me to get this data up to, like, I would have to write a whole custom service to write this, host it, and then an interface for it, and then refresh it every so often. And then like you're maintaining this whole deployment just to look at like log files on a legacy system. MCP server goes out, looks at those log files, parses them, provides you the information. So that could be really helpful workflow for somebody who's like, man, I've got like this stuff that runs on this old version of Internet Explorer 5 and requires Flash to run still or something like that.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in. I had not.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's a lot of stuff like that where legacy systems bringing disparate sources of data together under that single pane of glass, where otherwise you would have to maintain a ton of different connectors. You have the fuzziness of the AI and like, these are the files, these are where they exist. Just tell me about them.
Yeah. I think so you've got the use case of an MCP. I'm surely somebody has created an MCP for like Access or any of these old database systems. I can think there's a lot of value there. Because you're going to have a maintained repository for accessing legacy database systems, just for the read perspective. And I think that applies heavily in manufacturing because there's so much data that they don't have access to, that they don't want to have to lift and shift. I think I was on a show 5 or 6 weeks ago, when somebody said, if you're an MSP, go scan all your client environments and look for hosted SQL servers, on-prem SQL servers, and those are clients to go talk to for AI implementations, because you're able to A, take the data and finally lift it to the cloud. Or if it doesn't apply, that's fine. But B, you're able to access that data and bring it into an LLM and start getting it, because anything that's hosted on an old on-prem SQL server is very unlikely to have enriched LLM or AI capability. I would almost go zero, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody's updating or maintaining that anymore. So lots of value there. And I think MCPs have a good play in there. The other thing that you really inspired me that I jumped out to say, you mentioned like Flash. And I know this is off the MCP track, but I want to go down it for a minute. Like these Flash applications in Internet Explorer. I hadn't realized, I've been thinking about co-work and OpenClaw and things like that. As value creators for me and my productivity today. I hadn't considered the value of a co-work or an OpenClaw accessing legacy Flash applications and scraping data from legacy systems to be able to create some intermediary, like, I want to call it manual, because it's the OpenClaw or it's the co-work running into these legacy applications. But it's not manual, it's AI calling an actual co-work model to access a legacy application, navigate the structure, get the data from the system, and then return it. It's going to be very slow, but it's a really interesting use case.
Think about the time invested like, okay, it may be slower, but think about the time invested for you to instruct that agent to do that versus upgrading the legacy system and upending the business.
Yeah.
It's done. Like, I'm going to go off on a slight rabbit hole. I'm going to take like 5 minutes here to explain this, but it's an exact use case of what you're talking about. So I'm a total nerd. We've known each other for a while. I like video games. I like watching people speed run video games. I can't speed run. I like the tool development aspect of it. There's this old video game that this guy was playing, speed running. He didn't have an accurate way to time it. I got the executable, decompiled it in this program called Ghidra, which is NSA's tool that's used to decompile binaries so that you can do reverse engineering on them.
Okay.
I started to look at it, and it's all assembly code with pseudo C code paired to it. So it's like C code that you'd think the C code would look like if you looked at the assembly and then wrote C from it. Both of those are things that I write Python. I'm not reading C. Like, I'm just gonna be straight up honest.
Yeah.
So I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, there is no way that I can figure out what's going on here. I go out and look. Like, the Ghidra doesn't have, like, it's just its own standalone Java application on the computer. It doesn't have like rich API integrations or anything like that.
Yep.
I go out on GitHub, find the Ghidra MCP server. Now I can talk with the code base that's been decompiled, and then the MCP server has access to do all of the operations that it needs to within Ghidra. So I can ask it a question about, like, hey, in this code, what looks like this is happening at this time? And then it goes through, decompiles everything, relabels everything. The obscurity is gone, like you said, because it can go through, look at this raw code, tag whatever.
Yeah.
That's like the perfect example. Like with your legacy stuff too, there's no way that we're going to write any kind of implementation layer on top of this. But if we can go top down with MCP and look at it, look into it, and like you said with the Flash browser, interacting with it through, I don't know, Selenium interacts with Flash.
Yeah, I was just say Selenium or Puppeteer or something like that.
Yeah, that legacy application of bringing that at least into a more modernized solution where you can have that data exfiltrated, be able to interact with it without having to be in front of it on the one computer that's air gapped from the network because, it's the only one that can run Internet Explorer 5.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot there. I mean, I hadn't even considered giving AI Ghidra or something to now autonomously decompile applications and try to identify and improve. Like, that's a whole can of worms that sounds terrifying but plausible. But I want to circle us back to Brett's point, which is like, where do we create value in manufacturing? I think we got a little technical there, but we actually got some actual valuable outcomes. If I'm in your shoes, Brett, like, the way to think about it is data that was previously inaccessible to APIs or aggregating may now be accessible, thinking about them with MCPs or direct database access via MCPs. So you might be able to aggregate data that you hadn't been able to aggregate before. You might even just have us, without, taking a bomb to an anthill here, you might even just get benefit of AI parsing the database and being able to give you real-time queries to pull and aggregate your data better together at speed. That might just be the fastest way. Then we have this world in which we might use co-work models to access old school Flash or legacy applications in manufacturing industries. which is a super interesting world because you'll now be able to access data that was previously inaccessible. And then the other way that I thought might be really valuable is if you pull all that together and you have an MCP, and they might be off the shelf MCPs, like being able to access an Access database or some old school SQLite database or SQL databases. You might be able to give your manufacturing manager the ability to parse all these IoT devices in real time with a chat interface.
Yep.
Back to Eric's earlier point of having a CLI to be the home for where all of work gets done. And then the decompile story there was super interesting too, in the sense that where you might be running into use cases downstream that you've never been able to identify or support or look at any before, you might be able to put agents on it to start doing some debugging. So I don't know if that helps you sell manufacturing, but the concept, or sell to manufacturing and agents to manufacturing. But what I think it does is it lets you think that now I have access to data. And once you have that aha moment that maybe there's data you weren't able to access, you can reframe some of the automations or some of the value creation that you're doing in the manufacturing space. So I kind of wanted to pull all that together.
I think to pull back in from my point, or from that whole tangent that I went into, the other cool thing about that is you now have like an agent that can autonomously decide to continue to run tools to get to its end. So you're not just like in, out, like get this piece of data, calculate it, and then feed it back to the agent. You know, you can have these autonomous workflows that become emergent from your questions to the agent.
Yeah, and you have always on workers too, right? In that case, and that's more automation and less agents, but they're always on workers with the in out, having it autonomously reading IoT data, for instance, and looking for anomalies, or being able to read. You need these legacy database applications to predictably look for manufacturing failures in the assembly line or into the production line or something like that. There's a million different corner use cases.
Yeah.
He says, heck yeah, it does help. All right. I didn't know if we were helping him or not. I didn't know if we were just hypothesizing.
I know. Good.
I'm glad to hear it could help, Brett. Yeah. Before I jumped onto that, we talked about safety. We talked about security. We talked about some different types of attacks. Let's talk about the future. You know, you seem pretty plugged into this space. You seem pretty lined into where it's headed. Based off of what you're reading, where do you feel like the natural next maturity is for MSPs? Like, or not MSPs, sorry, that's my acronym, but MCPs. Like, where do you think this thing heads next to become more enterprise grade or to become more usable in the real world?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I've said this every time that you've said this. Okay, there's a couple different points to make. So if you looked online in the recent week, apparently there's a lot of people that believe MCP is dead in favor of skills. Now, MCP, the reasoning has been because it leads to model bloat. There's a lot of token use through MCPs, whereas the skills, which are like the single user defined flat files of like how to do these things.
It's a new concept to me. I'm ready to pull that one apart too.
Skills are like the OpenClaw implementation.
Oh, okay, I got you. All right.
And then like GitHub has, you can specify skills in your GitHub repo, and then it pushes up to the agents that run in GitHub agents.
Okay.
There's layers to it.
I think
there's
always things to learn.
Yeah. So MCP is like a much more robust, finished version. It's like the kind of the analogy of like, I built a car in my garage. Okay, that's great, but how do we build a factory for it?
Yeah.
MCP is like the factory level produced car.
Okay.
And a skill might be something that I built in my garage. So who knows if when I leave, the thing's going to fall apart.
Yep.
You know, if I go buy a car from Honda, I'm pretty confident that it's not going to fall apart.
I do like that. Yeah. I see. Are skills mostly user defined at this point?
Yeah, there's also like skills marketplaces where people go crazy, like, oh, I want this skill that does this skill that does this, and then you end up with 500,000 skills, but most of them are just implementations of like the hello world skill or the to-do list, you know. But yeah, like a skill would usually just be user defined. I wouldn't say less robust. It depends on who's making it, but if it's put out by a vendor or an open source community where people have stake in maintaining the MCP server, you'll probably have a more polished product.
Yeah, you use the word open source. That's where I was going. It feels like skills are more like the open source model, where MCPs are more your enterprise model of, you know, privately built by the vendor. I know that they can be open sourced. I'm not trying to drive that delineation, but it's almost like the better way to say it, closed source model versus open source model. I liked your analogy of the Honda story because I know if I'm buying something from Honda, I know what it's going to produce.
Yeah.
Whereas with the skill, where it's collaborated by a group of 30 or 40 different people, I kind of know what it's going to produce, but ultimately, I kind of like the idea of just going to Honda.
Yeah,
And
do I have the
finding
trust? I don't have the trust of the
Yeah.
organization or the dealer network to support it if I need to take it in for a warranty, you know?
Well, and you use the word trust, and I think that's where all of this boils down to is like, where does your trust and risk tolerance lie when you're looking at experimentation with AI? If I'm looking at to-do list, I might have trust on trying a skill. If I'm looking at delivering reports to my customer, I'm probably going to want to lean into something like an MCP because there's lower risk. And so
Exactly.
risk is always part of the
Well,
calculation.
like, wasn't it nobody ever got fired for buying Cisco? Is that
Yeah.
so it's kind of I would feel the same way about like
It-
I'm not going to come up with the custom crazy microtik implementation for this company with custom firmware
yeah.
when I could just go buy Cisco.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's how I'm going to walk away with this one today. Is like it's the safe method. I'm sure there's a sorry, safe is a very loaded word there, but it's the predictable method from the vendor itself. I like that about MCP. That helps me really understand. So thanks for playing along with me here.
Yeah.
Um, if I'm a base operational person, I'm not hyper technical. Maybe maybe I'm not even a coder or an engineer. Can I get benefit from MCPs, and how would I get started if I wanted to try learning how to use them and create value with them?
Oh yeah, I mean, like so if I was just telling somebody to figure out MCP, like
Yeah.
I would say, hey, whatever chat interface you use, like if you use Claude Desktop, like think of a program that you use a lot, and then go out on the internet and see if there's an MCP server for it. Install it and see what happens.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
obviously vet it. You know, like
Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah,
just
yeah.
like and then come sue me because I told you to do
No, nobody's gonna sue anybody on my show. I hope.
it. But yeah, I mean, like yeah, go do it, experiment with it. You're like it's the tools are all there. You're gonna figure it out as you go. It's not something to think of as like, oh, like I have to sit down today and learn MCP.
Yeah.
Just start throwing it at the wall. You're gonna learn exactly what value comes through it. You're really only gonna learn the workflows as they become emergent when you're working with it.
You unlocked it for me, I think, a little bit even further today. Because now I'm going to go try and do some experimentations. Because I admittedly haven't played much with MCPs, but the implementation I'm going to try is just an MCP. Where do I spend all my day? I spend all my day freaking writing emails, Eric. That's just my job. An MCP into my Gmail or into my Outlook could be super powerful to parse all my flagged emails and just help me plow through it in CLI.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a wild use. That doesn't seem like a wild use case. That seems like something Brett could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah,
That's all we do in our life in sales and marketing and operations is write emails. That feels like a really low hanging use case.
yeah, the organization of it, everything like that. Yeah.
All right.
It's and the reason that I say is like just go out and do it. The use cases for MCP didn't become apparent to me until I really started like just like I wonder if I can do this. And like
Yeah.
at one point I just pointed Copilot at a repo and I said I have a series of bash files in here that I use as kind of like CLI commands. Write an MCP server for me. And then I could just like type and talk to my deployment
Yeah.
in natural language and it runs those bash files on the back end. That Gidra example I gave, that project would have taken me minimum 2 years to learn everything all the way through. I was able to do it in like 2 weekends.
Yeah.
You know, so like the things that it unlocks with the power of an LLM behind it, when you really hit your use case, it's like
Yeah.
it feels like you just I don't know, it's the golden use case sometimes.
Well, and it's unbelievable to me. I think the reason you said it would take you 2 years versus 2 weekends is because you didn't have to sit and read all the documentation. You didn't have to sit and understand every command line argument and flag that you could potentially parse and throw at this thing. You didn't have to do all of that. You simply allowed something like a Claude to build an MCP on top as an abstraction layer for the LLM on top of the existing documentation, meaning that you could, I don't want to say brute forced as if it was so archaic, but I'll kind of say brute force your way through it.
That's 100% it.
Yeah.
I didn't have to I didn't have to learn assembly. I didn't have to learn C. I didn't have to learn how to do like forensic reverse engineering. You know, like those are all PhD level. Like at that level of getting to the data that I had to, that's like a PhD. You know? I just did it in 2 weekends because I knew what I wanted. You know, so things like that are all possible, and those use cases exist. It's just it's wrapping your mind around. It's like when you first use ChatGPT and you're like, oh, like asking it questions. You know, like who is on Mount Rushmore or something like that, and then like you start to realize, oh, I can use this to like just fire questions off at it. It's never going to get mad at me. And I can just instantly gain this knowledge. Like in the Matrix, I know Kung Fu, you know, that's the same thing. It's the same thing with MCP once you kind of discover those use cases. So it's about understanding it, learning it, implementing it, and then the power gets unlocked.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, I'm walking away out of here today. I'm going to be trying to plug up a lot of my tools into MCPs and see what happens. All right, we are now at 9:45. I want to make sure we always wrap around 9:50, 9:55.
Yeah.
My final question before we go into the wrap-up segment is my question for every show is, what didn't I ask you today that you thought I was going to ask you? And give me an answer to that.
I think I really got to cover everything. And what I wanted to do was make sure that I made my skepticism of it understood. So I'm
Yeah.
not like a full-on proponent of this, but also to express what pure value is there and like what MCP is and what it isn't. And there's so many fuzzy things around it of what it is, isn't. I think the important thing to take away is it's one of the ways that an AI tool can connect to external tools. So
Yeah.
you get disparate data, interaction with programs, anything like that. There's other ways to do it. MCP right now is kind of considered to be the more heavy-handed way. The things that are missing are wider adoption, maturity time. It kind of remains to be seen. Like OpenAI came out and said, "Hey, we're not doing APIs anymore. We're doing MCP." And I didn't really feel that those were interchangeable. So it's still a foreign concept to me. Like, hey, like bikes and cars have wheels. We've decided we're only doing bikes.
Yeah.
Like, that's not really a logical sentence.
Yeah.
But who am I to really call out OpenAI for their logic? Like, I'm just a dude.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then like Anthropic came out and said we're no longer using MCP because of the token bloat from it.
Yeah.
So this is all within about 4 months.
Yeah.
And who knows where this goes?
Well, when we asked the question earlier, where do we think MCP should go? I'm guessing that probably your point there with token bloat. I guess that's probably where they're focusing right now is how do we do token bloat reduction? Now, we could look if we look into the future, we actually believe tokens are probably going to become cheaper, even though right now they're in a negative burn rate. They cost the model providers more per token that they provide than they charge you, and they're burning cash alive to do it. But if you look at the technological evolution, the chip evolution, we believe that tokens are becoming cheaper. Maybe we don't care about token bloat in a year, and maybe that gives MCPs a leg up. If we don't care about things like that, maybe MCPs do become the standard. And that's where I always try to look at technology is, yes, it might not be superior today, but will it be superior in 12 to 24 months? And that's how I try to adopt, because you're adopting technology for a long time when you pick it up. So
yeah, realistically, I think my opinion is that it will be the way forward, or at least another implementation like it. If I do a skill and then I have to, like, the skill says that you have to run Python, and then I hand that skill off to somebody else, their environment doesn't have Python,
yeah,
then it's right out. So like maybe the MCP server and the extra token bloat is the tax that you pay for knowing that this is the known good execution environment provided by the known good vendor.
No, I love it. That's a great way to cap up the show here. Thank you, Brett. I agree. It was a very insightful conversation. I learned a lot today.
Thanks for your questions too, Brett.
Yeah, it makes it way more fun. I know we had a handful more people maybe being quiet in the background, but I appreciate you jumping in and asking them, Brett. It makes it really enjoyable. And I learned a ton today, Eric. I'm still reeling in. I'm going to have to consume some of these thoughts after. But we're at the final segment. There's two more. I say final segment. There's like 3 final segments, but this is like the second to last final segment.
Hit me with it.
It's called the espresso shots. It's a rapid fire wrap up move. And so what it is, it looks like this. You have as much time as you want to answer the question, but you only get 1 sentence to answer it. And sometimes I allow semicolons, but like we try to be a stickler to this segment. So you ready?
Oh, yeah, hit me. Yeah,
I know. I know I'm verbose
Let's
too,
go.
so 1 sentence is impossible to me. What is one myth around MCPs that need to die? Or is it too early? Are they not even?
That is dead.
That's dead?
Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't know why is the new thing to just call everything dead?
It's like
MCPs are dead. Like
OpenClaw came out, and then over the weekend, everybody used it and pretended that you should have been using this for years beforehand, even though it didn't exist. So the next cool thing is like being ahead of the news in AI.
Yeah.
So, I can call MCP dead, so I must be the informed one. Like that's how I take it.
Yeah.
I think it's a disservice to the stuff that's going on because you put that sentiment out there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, yeah, I heard that we don't use MCP anymore.
Well, you get a good viral post if you call something dead these days. I guess.
That's the truth.
What is the most? What is one capability that's being really underrated around MCPs today? I'll answer my thought. Give you a moment here. One capability that I've taken away from this show is just its ability to aggregate all my data systems together. I think that's probably one of the most powerful capabilities out of the MCP side, because I've always thought of them as create, update, deletes, and less focused on the read part. But I think that's my capability I'm walking away with today. Anything to add to that? Or did I steal yours?
No, I think from the manufacturing conversation, I would
Yeah.
like to explore more of the integration with legacy software as a way to ooh, explore the integration with
Yeah.
legacy software more. Period.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my sentence.
All right. You put it into a sentence. I like it. All right. Biggest mistake an engineer or a team makes when they adopt MCPs?
The same very vague definition of having a very vague goal of what you believe MCP should do instead of defining exactly what you want out of it.
I think that's a really good applicable sentence to a lot of AI, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it didn't work. Well, what was your goal? Did it hit your outcome? Did you give it a task that was achievable? Or,
Yeah.
people tend to think it's just a do anything machine. Um, if you are talking to an engineer on the other side of this camera, what are the skills they need to focus on to be ready for this future within MCP world?
Just a curiosity to explore. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that once you see the value, a curiosity to explore and an openness to it. It's not like it's funny. Like we just spent a half hour to hour talking about MCP. Like this is exposing AIs to external tools.
Yeah.
Think of it like that. Like it's not the most complex thing. Like just thinking about the workflow of how LLM connects to tools and how you can make that happen.
Yep, I like it. You got the word curiosity in there. I'm very happy about it. So I'm like 50 or 60 episodes into the show. I think I did AI analysis on all the transcripts. The most common framing around all of the shows, whether it's leadership, MCPs, security vulnerabilities in AI, curiosity has been the one big trail through it. And I get to keynote at MSP GeekCon around curiosity and my learnings from curiosity on this show. So it's going to be super fun.
That's a really cool theme to have through.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important part of being excited about what the future is having that spark of curiosity to keep this going. And that's what pushes all this forward.
Curiosity is king. But I got a lot of flack because I wrote my keynote title in Python, and people didn't like the Python. Which I don't get that. I thought it was fun. I think what was it? It was like career dot trajectory plus equals accumulate curiosity.
There's a little bit of misunderstanding around that. Is that what?
No. Some people are just Python haters in my crew. Yeah, that's okay though.
I'm not going to go off on a rant.
No, I know we don't need to get on a Python hate rant. All right.
So I like Python for the record.
I like Python. Yeah, I like Python. I'm like a Bash guy, so Python's always a good upgrade. MCPs become real when ...
The ecosystem is robust.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just about making sure, just as common as you build an API for your platform for a vendor side, you are building MCPs. I think as soon as that becomes the new standard, it's like you must have API and you must have MCP. That's when it becomes real.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Agreed.
All right, Eric, we made it. We made it to the end of the show. The final thing I always like to do is a shameless plug. If there's anything you want to promote, any cool not-for-profits you love and care about, any cool racing things that you got going on, or if you want people to reach out and connect with you, here's your opportunity. Just sign us off with a shameless plug.
Oh man, yeah. I just I don't have any real shameless plugs, but if anybody has any questions about this stuff, like I'm just a passionate dude, man. I like talking about this stuff. I get into it. So questions, anything like that, hit me up.
All right.
I can't. My email's really hard because it's like Eric FR with the @ sign. I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah, I think you tagged me. So
I tagged you on LinkedIn, and I'll put it in the write-up for tomorrow anyway. All right. Well, wonderful. Thanks, Brett. Thanks everybody else who was on the show. It's been a wonderful time. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Fun.
Thanks.